The Sharp Fall of Ben Shapiro. Video by Jose. Yeah, I love this. I love that this is happening. So many of the most prominent faces in conservative media, they are falling off. Their views are dropping. Their fan base is abandoning them. And we see them flocking more and more to individuals like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes, but these are not stable or reliable individuals. I think it's a sign that we are purging a very serious mental illness in our society. People are waking up. People are realizing that this was all just a fucking grift to make billionaires richer and to take advantage of the various bigoted ideas that a lot of people walk around with. People taking advantage of the fact that there are so many racists, homophobes, misogynists. But here's the thing with bigotry, it doesn't pay the bills. And so that is what brings a lot of these people in. They're saying these anti-black things. They're saying these anti-woman things. They're attacking people, and people are loving that shit. But they're also being sold this idea that this is the path that we need to go down in order to see our lives get better, right? See political change that results in better outcomes for you. But here's the thing, these people they're still broke. They're still struggling. They voted for Trump, and now shit is harder than ever before. And so they're getting tired of it. They're getting tired of it. And one of the people who it seems that the conservative base is very fatigued with is Ben Shapiro. Yeah, they have Zionist fatigue.
Things haven't been going great for Ben Shapiro. The former darling of right-wing media has been under a lot of fire from his right flank, and his once enviable position now seems very precarious.
Yeah.
Only 8 years ago, things were dramatically different as Ben Shapiro was making his ascent. Back on November 13th, 2017, an article in the New York Times described conservative commentator Ben Shapiro as the cool kids philosopher. The article is a relatively...
Anybody who ever thought Ben Shapiro was cool was not cool, bro. Anybody who thinks he's cool is not cool.
Gentle profile of Shapiro, describing him as a conservative firebrand.
Even before this fall off started to happen, Ben Shapiro's always been a nerd, bro. He always had lame nerd energy. And I don't mean nerd like he's into actual cool shit like video games and anime. I mean, like, he's just a dweeb. You know, he's a dweeb, a racist, know-it-all dweeb with a nasally voice. The only reason he's popular is because he was a fucking bigot.
Who holds extreme views, who is finding a young audience online. There's a part of this article that has an odd echo in the present. It reads, Mr. Shapiro is trying to define conservatism at a time when its meaning is up for grabs, and the Republican Party and traditional conservative media outlets like Fox are built for older audiences. This is even truer now, but the next sentence in the article is even more interesting. Shapiro does not like President Trump, and he disagrees with his old boss at Breitbart News, Stephen K. Bannon, that Trumpism is the future of the Republican Party.
Wow.
Obviously, Ben Shapiro has changed his tune long since then,
of course.
And that's part of how Shapiro has succeeded. A combination...
Yeah, no differently than J.D. Vance. These guys, they're just in it for the money. And so when they saw that Trump at the time was inevitable, he has switched his tune.
Of being morally lucky within the context of conservative politics and willing to sit at the altar of Trump, cashing in on the rightward shift represented by Trump and knowing when to fall in line when he saw where that push towards the right was actually coming from.
Right.
Not people like him, but the constituency more aligned with Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
This nimble...
But that's what makes Ben Shapiro such a fucking idiot. He forgot he was Jewish. And so when you support becoming even more extreme than he already was, he should have seen that inevitably. Like, in what world is pure white supremacy popular again and Jews are getting embraced? This guy's an idiot.
Movement helped him ascend the space to be one of the most popular voices in online conservative media in the early 2020s. But his metrics have been way down in 2025. In fact, I suspect further down than the publicly available data suggests. The reasons are many, and ironically, much of it is Shapiro's own making. I want to look through some of that history and explore just how someone can go from being one of the big dogs in the conservative movement to one of its favorite whipping boys. For those somehow unfamiliar with Shapiro's backstory, the very fast version was that he was a young conservative who got a taste of the limelight in conservative commentary before the age of 20. He tried to break into the world of Hollywood and failed.
I've written a couple comments.
Like a lot of these conservatives, right? They This is what they do, right? We even see with Sydney Sweeney. She's not getting the results that she wanted in Hollywood, and so now she's allowed herself to be used as a mascot for racism. And it's the same thing here. He wanted to be a director, he wanted to be a screenwriter, but he failed. He was trash at it, and so he just became a conservative grifter.
These kind of hour-long dramedies for spec script.
And have they been bought?
No.
He helped launch The Daily Wire, a conservative media company that had massive success in its earlier years, although its fortunes have turned as of late. I made a whole video about that if you're curious to learn more. As The Daily Wire weakens as a company, largely as a result of bad business decisions costing them tens of millions of dollars and losing key talent, driving down viewership, being so closely tied to that company has damaged Shapiro's reputation as well. Even though he isn't the CEO who has been driving some of those bad decisions, this company is still very much associated with him as a talent. Where Shapiro stands on a lot of issues hasn't changed much over the years. Going back to that 2017 New York Times article again, his positions are described like this. His views are extremely conservative. Transgenderism is a mental illness, as per the Encyclopedia of Mental Disorders before 2013. Yes, blacks have been historically discriminated against. No, institutions are not broadly discriminated against them today. The rich
That's just not true.
pay too much tax. Abortion should be illegal. Social Security ought to be privatized and Obamacare repealed. This is something I just want to mention off the top that while Shapiro is currently losing ground to people more extremely right.
But look at his positions. None of it. What are his positions, man? It's all, and this is what we always talk about in regards to white supremacy. It's just about hating other people. What are his views? He hates trans people. He hates black people, right? And he says the rich pay too much in taxes. Wow. Right. The billionaires, they're being asked to pay too much.
Abortion should be illegal.
The reality is people like yourself and I pay far more in taxes than the billionaires. Now, of course, not dollar-wise, but as a percentage of the amount of money that we generate by working, more of it, a bigger chunk of that goes to the government than with these billionaires. Also, these billionaires have all of these tools and strategies that they can employ to avoid paying taxes.
Social Security ought
Things that you simply can't do if you get a paycheck.
Be privatized and Obamacare repealed. This is something I just want to mention off the top that while Shapiro is currently losing ground to people more extremely right-wing than he is, back in 2017, he was already considered pretty far-right too. That should tell you a lot about the state of modern conservatism right now, at least in the media space.
Right.
One key issue is that Shapiro has been a steadfast supporter of Israel, making him vulnerable to criticism as he continues to run cover for the obvious genocide happening in Gaza, a sentiment that became more popular in mainstream media throughout 2025. In addition to that, there are several prominent right-wing creators.
See, this is the thing with being a conservative. If you are not a straight white male, you have to betray whatever group, whatever demographic you come from where you're regarded as a minority. You have to betray them completely. You cannot be pro-black and a conservative. You cannot be pro-woman and a conservative. And you cannot be pro-Israel and a conservative. You must submit completely and entirely to being for the white supremacist power structure. And if you aren't willing to do that, it is going to come around and bite you in the ass.
Specifically Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens, who very much hold
This is why Nick Fuentes says the things that he says, even though he has a brown Mexican father, right? Nick Fuentes is a brown Mexican, or he has a brown Mexican father, but yet he's shitting on people for marrying brown women. Something that his mother technically did. Of course, she married a man, but she married a brown man, right? And so is he disgusted with his own mother? Of course not. They're both filthy racists. But the point I'm making here is Nick Fuentes gets it. He gets it. Okay.
Against Ben Shapiro.
Same thing with Candace Owens. She gets it. You must coon out completely. There can be no room left to try and actually appeal to your own people.
Those view numbers sharply dropped through 2025. He was motivated to respond to the growing alternative in conservative media, one that was growing increasingly hostile towards him. A video from October 30th titled "Woke Politics Infected the Far Right" is his attempt to explain just what's going on.
You do have one party, the Democratic Party, that has increasingly made it clear that there is a population they do not like, and that population that they apparently do not like is white Christian males. That is the population that must be targeted.
To evidence.
Yeah, because they're full of bigots. But you've also made it clear on the conservative side that you hate everybody who's not a white Christian male or Jew, at least in your case, and that's where you fucked up.
This claim that the Democrats are targeting white Christian males, he mentions the candidacy of Zohran Mamdani, who was recently elected mayor of New York City. Mamdani received, at best, tepid support for his candidacy from the Democratic Party, even after winning the party's nomination.
What is it, though, that has held you back? I mean, usually this is somebody that won a Democratic primary. You know, it usually wouldn't be that much of a question whether or not, you know, a congressman from the city of New York, the Democratic leader, would endorse him. What's given you pause?
Well, we've had very good conversations over the last few months.
He even had supposed fellow Democratic politician Andrew Cuomo run against him in the general election. Whatever problem Shapiro has with Mamdani, it's incredibly dishonest to present him as a representative of the Democratic Party as a whole, or even someone warmly embraced by the party. It's one of the ironies of Shapiro, though, trying to present the left as being taken over by the extremists, when he has folks even further right than him entrenching themselves on the right.
Yeah.
Shapiro's other example of the left targeting of white Christian males is even sillier.
You're people of faith? You go to church on Sunday and pray on church on Sunday and pray on people the rest of the week? What is this? What is this?
Right, the kind of scorn that Nancy Pelosi has for religious people, religious conservatives who go to church on Sunday and disagree with her on politics. Well, that has led to a massive backlash.
I don't even know how to respond to this. I'm not even...
You see, it's so funny. Because he's a Jew and he hates Jesus and he believes Jesus was a liar, a con man, right? I mean, if you read the Talmud, they say far worse things about Jesus in there, right? The Jews, they fucking hate Jesus. They hate Christianity. They look at it as a completely false religion and a bastardization of their religion. But because he's grifting to low information white Christian men, he says things like, they have a problem with religious people. But then these same people will turn around and attack Muslims. Don't Muslims fall into the group of religious people? No. It's because he's in this weird position where he's always trying to shoehorn Judaism into Christian America, right? He loves to use the term Judeo-Christian values. It's Judeo-Christian values. They're always trying to tag along, man.
I've been convinced that Pelosi is...
But you don't get to go far.
On an accent here, but it does remind me of how Candace Owens will string together nonsense anecdotes like these, attach them to a narrative, and pretend like it's a settled story.
Right.
Again, another irony considering Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro are very much at odds when their methods are quite similar. He gets sillier later on when he talks about how speaking Spanish is completely fine, but apparently when Mamdani does it, it has an undertone.
If you want to appeal to an audience, speaking to them in their home language is a smart thing to do. But the entire undertone of everything Mamdani does is, I am one of you, right? I am an immigrant. I am not of Western culture.
How does speaking Spanish signal you aren't part of Western culture?
Right.
The language comes from as far west as you can get in Europe, and it's spoken almost exclusively in the Western Hemisphere. What he means by Western culture here, I suspect, is whiteness.
Of course.
It's the only thing I can imagine him meaning.
Spanish is as west as it gets. The fuck?
Because he's certainly not talking about geography. The problem with Shapiro's argument
Next thing he's going to say French isn't Western culture either.
Isn't that it's laughably silly. At least that's not the problem I want to spend much time on.
Oh, but a bunch of brown people speak Spanish. I get it now. Oh, that's why. A bunch of brown people only speak Spanish because their ancestors were raped and colonized by white supremacist Spanish Europeans. Anyway, it's so funny. These people hate on their own handiwork. They hate on their own handiwork. They create all this shit. They create the black ghettos and then they complain about the black ghettos.
The argument here isn't that it's laughably silly. At least that's not the problem I want to spend much time on. The problem is how similar it sounds to arguments made by white nationalists like Nick Fuentes. Although Fuentes hates Shapiro, I doubt there's much he'd disagree with when it comes to Shapiro criticizing the Democrats for attacking white Christian men. It all contributes to the same political project. While these guys are openly hostile towards one another, they are very much pushing in the same direction. Shapiro goes into greater detail about how he believes this rise in bigotry on the right arose, and he can only express it in terms where he accuses the left.
So if the left says that white Christian males are the problem, the way that you respond is instead a DEI for precisely the people who are said to be the problem. Right now, the idea is that the systems should only benefit white Christian males.
It's cute that he's trying to rope DEI into all of this because there's actually a term already for what's being tried here, and it's called white supremacy.
Yeah.
And trust me, no one from the right got this idea from the left. And I'm sure Shapiro knows that, but he needs to play these word games to massage this civil war.
Oh, he's trying to frame the right embracing, the more overt embracing of traditional white supremacy and racism and bigotry. He's trying to frame it as white people DEI. That's so funny. He doesn't want to just call it what it is, white supremacy.
Within the right as somehow being the left's fault. When you spend your entire career relentlessly attacking the left and excusing the right, he can't even attack the extremists on his side without first pretending like this is somehow the left's fault.
Right.
When the truth is, if anyone is to blame here, it's people like him who have been turning a blind eye to this growing problem the whole time. Not because he's unaware of it, but because he's ideologically more similar to it than he's willing to admit. There's a great example of Shapiro's own extreme standards in this very video. He has the audacity to claim that Donald Trump is a normal president.
President Trump is as close to a normie president as we have had in the last several decades, which is bizarre considering, again, his sort of personality, but that is the reality.
There are masked men in the streets kidnapping people, labeling them criminals without due process, and deporting them, including some being sent to prisons in other countries. He has imposed sweeping tariffs that are wreaking absolute havoc in the economy. He's handed over health and safety to people who are gutting medical research and spreading misinformation and anti-vax nonsense. I could go on for
It goes on and on and on. When's the last time that entire agencies and government agencies, the keys to them were just handed over to an unelected billionaire for him to just go and do whatever the fuck he wants so that he can remove regulations that are preventing him from making even more money? When's the last time a president did anything like that? Nah, this is as abnormal as a president has ever been in American history.
Longer listing all the very non-normal things he's done, even for someone who supports all this stuff. They should at least be able to acknowledge that this is very much not normal.
Right.
Donald Trump is not a normal president. Part of Shapiro's problem is that he never allows blame to fall on the Republicans for anything, at least not in a way
When's the last time we had a president that wears his own merch all the time, even outside of the election cycle? Come on.
It is damning enough that someone would decide not to vote for them. One great historic example of Ben Shapiro's blind spot, willful or not, is Candace Owens. Although they had a falling out over her opposition to Israel, eventually leading her to being fired, it almost certainly had more to do with her anti-Zionism than her well-known anti-Semitism.
Right.
Owens got her job at the Daily Wire well after she had made her comments about Hitler's problem was trying to extend his vision outside of Germany.
If Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism.
Anyone with a
she's basically saying if he had just kept his tyranny and his persecution of Jewish people to the confines of the German border, it would have been fine. Which shows you that she's also been an anti-Semite for a long time.
grade school understanding of history should be well aware that Hitler's vision was pretty bad for Germans too, particularly if they were Jewish. Owens also defended Kanye West while he was first melting down, and in this case, Shapiro joined in, defending him too. And this was well after it had been established that Kanye West had started hanging out with Nick Fuentes. Here's Ben Shapiro on October 7th, 2022.
I care about the fact that there's more black babies being aborted than born in New York City at this point. That 50% of black deaths.
I can almost guarantee you that Kanye West has had women have abortions, bro. I mean, it's just a hunch. I have no evidence of it, but yeah. These guys, man, complete fucking goofball Kanye turned into. My heart breaks every time I listen to like Kanye's music, the shit that's still on my playlist, because that shit just is so heat. It's so fire, bro. It's gas. And to see him turn into what he's become is truly sad.
In America is abortion. So I really don't care about people's response to that. I perform for an audience of one, and that's God.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
that went out the window real quick, didn't it?
Oh, I mean, frankly, it sounds fantastic. Frankly, Kanye sounds much more sane than virtually everybody else in public life.
Shapiro in the October video also made this remark.
The pathologizing
They're so obsessed with controlling women, bro.
of right-wing viewpoints goes back a long
Disgusting.
way. It goes actually back to a book by Theodore Adorno called The Authoritarian Mind. The suggestion was that there was a pathological drive in capitalist societies that led people to become authoritarian. And so the idea was that if you were right-wing, you were going to become a fascist.
First, the book is actually called The Authoritarian Personality. I can't say I've read it myself, but it's very funny to me that Ben Shapiro tries to critique its supposed claim of conservatives being more prone to becoming fascists by using the example of Kanye West.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
It's very important to state how completely wrong Ben Shapiro was in this instance. In the same video, he's also responding to an interview Tucker Carlson did with Kanye West, which was later revealed to have edited out various racist conspiracy theories that West had mentioned, almost as if Carlson does these interviews to help bigots seem less extreme than they actually are.
Of course, that's exactly what he's doing.
I prefer my kids.
That's the bullshit with these guys. You're like, I just want to sit down with anybody, right? I want to sit down with AOC and Nick Fuentes. But then they edit out the worst shit that they say. And it's like, you're not really doing it. If you're really trying to let these people say what they really think and what they really feel, instead of deplatforming them, then why don't you let them speak freely? Why do you go ahead and edit out the shit that you know will get the video taken down, or, you know, will cause a bunch of outrage or reveal how bigoted and evil and hateful that person is? It's because you are also a bigot and you're trying to whitewash them.
It's new Hanukkah, then Kwanzaa. At least it will come with some financial engineering.
The other thing is these guys never actually do end up going and sitting down with the extremists on the left. They never do. They use that as an argument. I'll sit down with AOC and I'll sit down with Nick Fuentes, but yet we never get the AOC interview. And to compare AOC to Nick Fuentes is fucking retarded, bro.
All of this would, you would think, cause Shapiro to perhaps reflect on the alliances he's made on the right. In the case of Candace Owens, he was willing to look the other way because he was willing to accept a little anti-Semitism if it meant he would have her talents at his disposal at the Daily Wire. In the case of Tucker Carlson, he was a major host on Fox News and a useful ally. So there's a clear advantage to not turning on someone like that, even though he's clearly running cover for someone who holds some very troubling opinions toward Jewish people. This brings us to a major episode in Ben Shapiro's decline, his response to another interview Tucker Carlson had, this time with Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes was a gentle one. Fuentes, as usual, went on diatribes about the Jewish community.
They have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country.
Although there was some pushback against Fuentes, Carlson seemed more like he was giving him tips on how to appear more palatable to a wider audience.
But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
Okay. Well, I just think it's important to say that.
There's a presumption in everything Carlson says that he and Nick Fuentes generally agree, but Carlson just wishes Fuentes spoke more delicately about the subject. It both ingratiates Carlson to Fuentes' audience while giving Fuentes mainstream credibility. Oddly enough, in his response to this interview, Ben Shapiro had a similar takeaway.
Essentially, Tucker Carlson believes it's okay to be racist. You just can't sound racist. You should try your best not to sound racist. And that's what all of these people on the conservative right, they believe. They're perfectly okay with racism and racist sentiment. They just want you to be, more polite in your discourse.
Okay.
Probably you came away thinking that, for the most part, Fuentes lives on the radical edge of normality. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living.
But Ben Shapiro gets off track a little later when he says this.
Now, since his exit from Fox News in 2023, when, of course, he was a very, very popular host, Tucker Carlson has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar.
Shapiro would go on to provide some good example of Carlson's show being a mouthpiece for pro-Russia propaganda and conspiracy theories. But what he gets very wrong is that this didn't start when Tucker Carlson left Fox News. He's been doing this for years. A video I made several years back looked at his programming on the Fox Nation streaming service back when he was still at Fox News, and he frequently had fringe right-wing figures on, like the raw egg nationalist. That was part of a special about how men's health can be improved by drinking raw eggs.
These guys are all fucking cavemen, bro. They're all barbarians.
And shining red light on your balls.
Of course.
This is, of course, just the tip of a very bizarre iceberg. He would talk about everything from alien abductions to the danger of wind turbines. And the white nationalist connection doesn't just come from the occasional guest. His top writer at the time, Blake Neff, was forced to resign after he was exposed posting racist and sexist comments online for years. And he bragged about smuggling some of that into Tucker Carlson's scripts.
Oh, of course.
And it's very well documented that white nationalists often tuned into Tucker Carlson when he was on Fox News, taking notes on how to more effectively phrase their own beliefs, because he was so good at streamlining them into mainstream conversations. Tucker Carlson has been swimming in these waters for a long time. Oh, just a side note, if you're wondering what happened to that head writer, Blake Neff, after he was forced to resign from Tucker Carlson's show, he got a job at Turning Points USA.
Oh,
just
nice.
Thought I should mention that.
Nice.
When Tucker Carlson
was
fired from Fox News in 2023, Ben Shapiro's pal and former Daily Wire CEO, Jeremy Boring, made a comment about how they'd love to hire him. Ben Shapiro at the time had expressed disagreements with Carlson over foreign policy, but did describe him like this.
Whatever Tucker is, he is certainly a compelling presence. And he does, when it comes to social issues particularly, have an extraordinary amount of moral clarity.
And he criticized the media's commentary on Carlson.
The Times did an investigation into how Tucker Carlson stoked white fear to conquer cable. This, of course, is their routine, is that anybody they don't like is a white supremacist.
This really captures the bind Shapiro finds himself in. His criticisms of Carlson in the present are solid, but he's also pretending that this is somehow new. When the truth is, it's not that Carlson has changed, it's just a lot of this is starting to hit Ben Shapiro more directly.
Right.
And it's that interview with Nick Fuentes that really seems to have brought things to a head. For those who don't know, Nick Fuentes has hated Ben Shapiro for many years, in part because of Shapiro being Jewish, but also because he sees Shapiro as someone who undermined his career. In his interview with Tucker Carlson, Fuentes described how Shapiro was initially an inspiration for him.
We do this debate about Trump versus Hillary. And so I'm there and I'm pro-Trump and I say, I think Trump's going to win. And I'm straight up like ripping the Ben Shapiro talking points.
This admiration didn't last as, according to Fuentes, Shapiro publicly called him out over some of his takes regarding Israel. If Nick Fuentes said the sky was blue, I'd stick my head out the window to double check. So it's important not to take it on faith that he's being honest in any of this. But what is easily verifiable is that he has been talking shit about Ben Shapiro for many years now, including one very messed up incident where he confronted Shapiro in public while he was out with his family. Although Fuentes and Shapiro insist none of this is personal, it's hard not to notice that Ben Shapiro had for years avoided calling out Tucker Carlson this aggressively, and now he's saying stuff like this.
Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care.
And that's exactly what you do. And that's exactly what you do for the white supremacist power structure.
He provides them with a massive signal boost. He isn't merely talking to people in good faith, of course. He's promoting certain people and ideas and attacking others.
And Shapiro goes so far as to point out how even Nick Fuentes can see how Tucker Carlson is a fraud.
And after years of bragging about being an elite, bragging about being so out of touch and so rich, now he's going to be the spokesperson for all the white people. Now he's going to roll up his sleeves. I just like to hunt and fish in my log cabin. I care about Klarna and credit card debt.
And now Ben Shapiro is very much on board with the idea that Tucker Carlson is spreading the same ideology as Nick Fuentes, which is especially ironic considering just a few years ago, he put out a video titled, "Tucker Carlson is not Nick Fuentes,"
Wow.
where he defends Carlson when his rhetoric was compared to Fuentes's.
Wow.
This is a godless country. I hate it.
You're right. They're godless. That is exactly right. I never talk like that, but it's
Okay, pause
true.
it right there. Okay, so again, this idea that if you say that God has gone absent from the public square, that you're in league with Nick Fuentes? No, Nick Fuentes literally says that he wants a Catholic dictatorship in the United States. That is not the same thing as what Tucker Carlson is saying. This is the stupidest game.
It's incredible that not even 3 years later, Ben Shapiro is...
Now, here's the thing. Ben Shapiro, if he wasn't Jewish, he would be Tucker Carlson. He would be no different. The only reason he has a problem with this idea of a Catholic dictatorship is because he's Jewish. That's it. That's where it begins and ends.
After Tucker Carlson for being aligned with Nick Fuentes when he was criticizing The Daily Show for noticing patterns in their rhetoric. I want to highlight another part of the Carlson interview of Fuentes that might explain the phenomena going on here.
When you get attacked, when people call you names, like they always called me racist, and I would always think to myself, I'm actually not. Maybe the point is to make me racist. Where you just get to a point where you're like, well, if you're going to slander me, then I'll just become the thing you're calling me.
No, that's not a thing. If people all of a sudden start calling you a PDF file, you're not going to start touching kids. It's not how that works. Okay. No, it's just that, well, since so many people believe that I'm this thing, might as well take the mask off and just embrace it. That's what these guys do.
Do you think that's a feature of human nature, don't you?
Mm-hmm. This is, of course, a deeply silly thing to say. It's basically recreating that webcomic of someone who said they had no choice to become a Nazi because someone made a comment about Trump supporters being racist. Ben Shapiro said as much when Megyn Kelly asked him about it.
I'm a little tired of the excuse that if you are called something enough, that justifies all of the subsequent activity. I've been called every goddamn name in the book. Every name in the book. And I have not, but I have not shifted my positions because people call me names. That is a childish thing to do.
He's absolutely right here, and one thing I noticed that every time I agreed with Ben Shapiro on something, it's when he was saying things people on the left have been saying for years, which honestly speaks to how effective we are at criticizing the right, whether they acknowledge it or not. Tucker Carlson plays this same game. Recently, Ben Shapiro made some comments about retirement that went viral.
No one in the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem.
Tucker Carlson responded to that, sounding a lot like someone on the left.
Poorer people, working class people, blue collar people are aching. They have trouble walking. Their backs hurt.
Yeah.
So
the people that hold this fucking country together. This guy wants 70-year-old men, lifting buckets of concrete and shit.
Retirement for a man who climbs ladders is a little bit different from a man who hosts a podcast.
Right. Carlson even brought up the impact of systemic failures.
We are subject to forces that we can't control. It's just a fact. I didn't write the tax code, for example. I don't have any control over the hiring standards at various companies or the admission standards at various schools. Those are systemic problems. It's just a fact.
This is another one of Carlson's well-worn strategies to make a systemic critique, while his solution typically involves demonizing immigrants and other vulnerable groups.
Right.
It's something he's done time and time again, and honestly, only a sucker would fall for this sort of scam, and he's been pulling it for years. What's even more ridiculous about Tucker Carlson's criticism of Ben Shapiro's rhetoric around retirement is that none of this is new. Shapiro was saying this at least a year and a half ago. It's hard to imagine these guys have only recently noticed these things about one another and were either too cowardly to mention them before or perhaps saw more professional advantage in staying quiet. It really speaks to what opportunists they are. And I want to go back to that video from October where Ben Shapiro was complaining about woke politics infecting the far right.
The Democratic Party has been playing with these forces for so long, it's now too late for them to dissociate from those forces.
One of the big complaints he has about figures like Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes is that they push anti-Semitism. But back in 2011, Ben Shapiro tweeted this. The Jewish people has always been plagued by bad Jews who undermine it from within. In America, those bad Jews largely vote Democrat.
Nice. So he's well, we already knew he was a sellout. You can't be a minority and a conservative without being a sellout. But I didn't know that he articulated his Jewish raccoonery. Okay.
In his book, Primetime Propaganda, the true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV, he described how liberal Jewish people had taken over Hollywood to advance a left-wing agenda. He's also run cover for the Great Replacement theory, trying to detach it from its anti-Semitic origins into a more pliable concern over how demographics impact voting. There's something very unsettling about how Ben Shapiro was perfectly happy to point the finger at bad Jews, but somehow thinks it's the left that's convincing parts of the right that there's some kind of Jewish problem. He seemed unaware of the fact that there are actually some pretty powerful anti-Semitic forces on the right that have been there for a very long time, and maybe the reason they liked him is because they found him kind of useful. It's a bit of a tired point, but it hasn't stopped being true. Ben Shapiro is being devoured by the monsters he helped protect, and I suspect it's happening more aggressively than people might expect. While looking at some of Ben Shapiro's recent videos, I couldn't help notice that the metrics seemed a bit off. For example, his long-form videos do very well, but his clips have dreadful numbers in comparison, something that historically hasn't been true for his channel. If we look on Social Blade, we can see a large drop-off in viewership over the past year. So at first glance, it seems as though his current audience, what remains of it anyway, has a very different viewing habit than his old audience. I wanted to look closer at what might be happening, so I decided to graph out what was publicly available with some comparisons. In this first series of graphs, I'm counting views in 100s to compare them with the total number of comments. The reason I'm counting views like this is because it makes the graph read a little better visually, and since I'm doing it for each graph, the presentation of data is consistent. Looking at Ben Shapiro's long-form videos, there is a big disparity between the number of comments and the number of views, especially when we compare the number of comments to his short-form videos, where they track much more closely. If we compare him to other channels, in this case I chose Candace Owens and Matt Walsh, we can see that Shapiro's long-form videos are getting much less engagement. And if we go back in time to January of 2025, Shapiro's long-form videos are a bit closer. There is still a gap, though not quite as big.
Right.
If we calculate the odds of whether or not a view will lead to someone leaving a comment, we can see Ben's long-form videos are far less likely to have its viewers leave a comment under them, clocking in at less than 0.3% of viewers leaving.
He's botting views. That's where this is going. He's about to tell us. Ben Shapiro is now buying views to make his fall off not seem as horrible as it is, or at least that's what it looks like.
Comments, slightly more than half of what his videos used to get, and far behind Matt Walsh and Candace Owens, who get 3 and 5 times as many respectively.
Wow.
And keep in mind that of all of these channels, Ben Shapiro is the only one who doesn't do a premiere for his longer videos, where the earliest viewers are sounding off in the chat rather than leaving comments under the video. In fact, Ben Shapiro used to do premieres, which might explain why his older long-form videos had so few comments. We can see this pattern repeat itself when it comes to the number of likes left on videos. With all the other types of videos I looked at, the number of...
Now, again, the whole premiering thing, if you're not familiar, it's a feature that allows YouTubers to publish a video, but it publishes as a live video. And so people can comment in the chat live as the video drops and they're watching it together for the first time. And this is something that you see a lot with political channels, especially with the people on the Daily Wire. And so why would it be the case that Ben Shapiro stands alone as one of the members of the Daily Wire who doesn't practice this? It's because he knows that the amount of people who will actually be participating in the chat, it's going to look pathetic. It's going to be embarrassing. Even worse, he knows that a good portion of the people who will actually show up to comment are going to be Nick Fuentes fans who are just going to be trolling the entire time. And so he does, you know what I'm saying? I know he's deleting comments. He's banned certain keywords from the comment section. So if you try to type in those comments, it won't come out. He's scared. He's a scared little boy running away.
Likes were significantly worse. Viewers are 3, 4, and even 5 times less likely to click on that like button for Ben Shapiro's long videos than viewers of his long-form videos back in January or videos from Candace Owens and Matt Walsh. What all of these numbers amount to is, in my mind, 2 likely conclusions. Ben Shapiro's long-form videos are being heavily inflated by people who are only showing up to hit the dislike button or nothing at all. And if they're leaving comments, those comments are being deleted. The alternative is that someone is bodying his long-form videos, giving it inflated view numbers and very anemic engagement. Whichever of those 2 conclusions is more accurate, it doesn't look like a healthy channel at all.
Right.
I should mention that in my calculations, I did omit one video from Ben Shapiro's channel, the November 3rd one, titled Tucker Carlson Sabotages America. That one actually has metrics that reflect something that has nearly 1 million views. And it's also the one that has the most negative comments towards him. It seems like Ben Shapiro's only means of getting big numbers of engaged viewers these days is by being a lightning rod for hate.
Yeah, this is poetic justice at its finest. He made all of his wealth. He got his fame by being a hateful piece of shit bigot. And now he's receiving that same treatment from his own demographic, his own fan base. It'd be one thing if it was just people he's never tried to pander to, people who he's never tried to make content for. They have a hate boner for him, and so they're just, you know, flooding his shit with hate. But the reality is, people don't really have the energy to do that. So yeah, they'll go to one video or a couple of videos while the drama is going on. They'll leave you hate comments, but then they'll go back to watching what they usually watch, and your audience will then reclaim the majority of the comment section and the interactions with the like button. But it's his own fan base that he has cultivated for years that are ripping him apart. And it's beautiful. It truly is amazing.
There's some info I came across from Open Measures that attempted to gauge Nick Fuentes' growing profile and how it doesn't quite match the narrative around his ascent. Although Fuentes saw a massive spike in social media chatter about him after Charlie Kirk's murder, that growth has largely gone down. The Tucker Carlson interview didn't move the needle in nearly the same way. Most of the time Fuentes gets hyped up, people cite his Rumble stats, but it's something of an open secret at this point that Rumble's numbers are almost certainly bogus. My own investigation a while back found they were inflating their live stream view counts, and I would be shocked if that was the only metric that was being fudged over there.
Yeah.
I say all of this to remind everyone.
Yeah, no, I know somebody personally who has a lot of experience with Rumble, and they told me without any uncertainty that anyone you see getting a lot of viewers on Rumble, the grand majority of those views, it's all bots, bro.
And that these figures we're talking about today are incredibly niche. For fun, let's go to Ben Shapiro for that.
Every big audience in the media, you're talking about 3-4 million people. The electorate in the United States is generally about 160 million people. I think one of the mistakes politicians make is they look at X and they say, this is representative of the American body politic. And that is just too online. It's just way too online.
He could be talking about Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, or even himself. But their importance, specifically to conservative politics, I think reflects how terminally online politics has become now, further getting detached from real people and instead being obsessed with these internet celebrities as if they've somehow permeated the mainstream when really they're big names within a small conservative online media space.
Right.
At some point, Donald Trump is going to retire from public life, likely due to failing health. And right now, his cult of personality is the one thing uniting a lot of disparate parts of the right wing. This is something Ben Shapiro is well aware of.
I think that there are a lot of people who are planning for the post-Trump era, and they're trying to make moves right now in order to sort of consolidate their viewpoint in the post-Trump era.
Ben Shapiro represents the old guard of traditional conservatives, the former far right, before they are outflanked by an even more extreme America First movement, often associated with Shapiro's rivals, including Nick Fuentes and, to an extent, Tucker Carlson. It's not a coincidence that Carlson suggests that Fuentes has already won this fight.
And Ben Shapiro seems irrelevant to me now?
But back then, for the young,
I guess that's
huge.
true.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you won.
Oh, certainly.
The truth is probably more complicated, especially since it's hard to get
That must have been hard to hear.
Trustworthy numbers for all of them.
Especially when you look at he looks at his viewership, he looks at his comment section. I mean, at this point, he's probably deleted more comments than there are comments being, left up.
Yes, but for a political party that seems to be terminally online, it's not surprising that popular sentiment on the internet can be used to fuel a movement. It remains to be seen if it can actually translate to electoral success, though. One of the keys to Ben Shapiro's success online is that he's been able to avoid or build alliances with people who clearly don't like him. Alliances that would never work long term, but I suspect he thought he could get ahead of. As public opinion has shifted rapidly against Israel, it's become increasingly difficult for someone like Shapiro to continue his vocal support for the country. Many on the right have used this opportunity to smuggle their anti-Semitism into the broader criticism against Israel, but Shapiro can't make that move. While he was willing to make cheesy YouTube videos for clicks or endorse politicians he has serious misgivings about, there are some lines he won't cross when it comes to some of his values. In this case, it means defending a country committing a genocide, which is tragic in its own right. But in the world of conservative media, not being able to sell out your supposed values makes you vulnerable. Going back to the New York Times article, it's hard to imagine Ben Shapiro pivoting to be on the...
Yeah, you can't climb to the top of conservatism if you're not willing to sell out everybody and anybody.
...friendly side of the increasingly extreme right-wing base the way he had 8 years ago. mostly because he didn't really.
And that's because white supremacy ultimately is not about the benefiting of white people. There are so many poor white people in this country, so many suffering white people in this country. They utilize the grand majority of the welfare in this country. Sure, per capita doesn't matter. About, per capita doesn't matter. It'd be like, let's say we had a population of immigrants from some obscure African country, and there were like 2,000 of them, and 50% of them were on welfare, right? Which would be more than any other group in America. These dumbasses would run around talking about per capita, when in reality, they're consuming like a few $100,000 a year in government handouts, but then turn a complete blind eye to the billions of dollars being consumed by people in their own demographic, but they think somehow that's less important because per capita. And so we see the fruits of white supremacy. It doesn't even result in white people as a whole having a better life. And this is why I say white supremacy hurts everybody, including white people. White supremacy is a tool to pick the pockets of poor white people and put that money into the pockets of billionaires. And they use bigotry and the fact that these people are poorly educated as a way to mesmerize them and draw them in. The same people who put Donald Trump into power are the same people who were crying and lining up at food banks when Donald Trump made decisions that caused their food stamps to be delayed while the government was shut down.
He didn't really have to give anything up. He just had to pretend he liked Donald Trump. And Ben Shapiro was certainly tolerated and even celebrated because he was useful for attacking the left. But attacking the left while ignoring the far right only works when the far right isn't breathing down your neck in public awareness and pulling ahead in view counts. While I think Ben Shapiro's profile has been dragged down, I doubt he'll be completely finished forever. Careers in media can slump along if someone has a devoted enough base, and Shapiro still has some kind of audience keeping him afloat. A couple of years from now, it'll be interesting to see if he's found life in a new lane of political relevance, or if the times will pass him by and he'll end up forgotten, like pundits of the past, such as Bill O'Reilly.
Right.
In the meantime, we can enjoy insightful interviews from Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, but Bill O'Reilly, he had a crazy run, man. He was running shit for a long fucking time. Ben Shapiro, he's burning out real quick. So that was a sharp fall of Ben Shapiro by Jose. Great video. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's only the beginning. But you let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace out.